Welcome everyone, join us today as we dive into the life and legacy of Andrew Ridgeley, pop star and other half of Wham, and George Michael's closest school friend. So let's dive in. Andrew John Ridgeley, born the 26th of January 1963, in Windlesham, Surrey, England. Born to parents Jennifer and Alberto Zachariah, who later changed the family surname to Ridgeley, Andrew's family background was a mix of cultures. His mother was of English and Scottish descent, a schoolteacher by profession. His father, a Jewish man of Italian, Yemeni and Egyptian heritage, had been forced to leave Egypt in the aftermath of the Suez Crisis in the 1950s. After resettling in Britain, Alberto eventually worked for Canon, the camera and imaging company, carving out a steady living for the young family, which included Andrew's younger sibling, Paul. When Andrew was still a child, the family moved to Bushey in Hertfordshire, a suburb not far from London. Life there was ordinary but happy. He attended Bushey Meads School, where his mother also taught at a nearby primary school. Andrew was bright, outgoing, cheeky, and popular, the kid who seemed effortlessly cool, with a natural charisma that drew people in. In the mid-1970s, Bushey Meads welcomed a new pupil, Georgios Kyriakos Panayiotou, the son of a Greek Cypriot restaurateur, newly arrived at the school. As part of a buddy system, Andrew was asked to look after the shy new boy whose name seemed like a mouthful. Andrew shortened it affectionately to Yog, a nickname that stuck for life. The two boys could not have seemed more different at first glance. Andrew was confident, handsome, sporty and socially at ease. Yog was chubby, awkward, self-conscious, and still trying to find his place. But they clicked almost immediately, bonding over their shared sense of humor, similar family backgrounds, both sons of immigrant fathers who married English women, and a growing obsession with music, from classic soul and Motown to British pop and the emerging new wave scene. As teenagers, they spent hours together in school music rooms and village halls, experimenting with instruments, harmonies and song ideas. Yog learned piano, guitar and even violin. Andrew focused on guitar and rhythm. They rehearsed anywhere they could, a scout hut, a church hall, the school music block, slowly shifting from casual jamming with classmates to something more serious. Out of those rehearsals came a pact: they would form a band and make it in music together. This wasn't a vague teenage fantasy, for Andrew especially, it became a real plan. Even then, he showed a kind of fearless optimism, the sense that if you just pushed hard enough, something would happen. By the late 1970s, the British music scene had exploded with punk, ska and two-tone, and London's clubs were full of kids reinventing themselves every night. Andrew and Yog, now calling himself George, threw themselves into that world, travelling into Soho to dance at clubs like La Beat Route and Bogart's. Their first serious band was The Executive, a short-lived ska and new wave outfit with Andrew, George, Andrew's brother Paul, and friends from school. It never took off commercially, but it was crucial training. They learned how to rehearse properly, write original material, and think like a professional group rather than just a school band. Around this time, George took a job as a DJ at a local restaurant, traveling by bus from Bushey. On one of those bus rides, a melody popped into his head, the sax line that would become Careless Whisper. He worked on the tune in his head for months, and later married it to a chord progression Andrew had been playing on his guitar. The two of them fleshed out the song together, writing it when they were only about 17. In January 1982, they scraped together £20 and recorded a rough demo of Careless Whisper, and another track, Wham Rap, in Andrew's family home using a Porter studio and a cheap drum machine. It was basic, but they knew they were onto something. When George played the demo at a local club, the floor filled, a small but powerful confirmation that they had potential hits in their hands. On the dance floor at Bogart's one night, Andrew started chanting, "Wham Bam, I am the man," over a dance routine he and George had been working on. That playful chant gave them more than a hook, it gave them a band name, an attitude, and eventually a debut single. The Executive soon folded, and the core partnership that really mattered, Andrew and George, stepped forward as a duo. Wham was born. Using those early demos, Andrew and George began approaching labels, determined to push their way in. They eventually signed with Innovision Records, a small independent label distributed by CBS. Their debut single, Wham Rap, appeared in 1982, a sharp, funny and surprisingly political track about youth unemployment and living on the dole, wrapped in dance floor energy. It didn't make a huge impact at first, but a re-release in 1983 pushed it into the UK top 10. It was the follow-up though, that really put them on the map. Young Guns, released later in 1982, caught fire after a last-minute appearance on BBC's Top of the Pops, and reached number 3 in the UK. Suddenly, Wham weren't just another new act, they were stars in the making. Bad Boys and Club Tropicana followed in 1983, both hitting the UK top 10, and helping establish Wham's visual identity: bright colours, beach imagery, athletic dancing, youth and fun turned up to maximum. Andrew's image, tanned, athletic, often grinning at the camera, became a crucial part of that. George's voice and songwriting may have driven the records, but the duo's on-screen chemistry, and Andrew's photogenic presence, helped sell Wham to the world. Wham's debut album Fantastic arrived on the 1st of July 1983, and went straight to number 1 in the UK. It captured their early mix of social commentary and hedonism, but creatively, the duo were already moving on. The real explosion came with their second album, Make It Big, released on the 15th of October 1984. By then, Wham had signed directly to Epic, Columbia, and the label pushed them as a global pop priority. Make It Big lived up to its title. It reached number 1 in the UK, the US and multiple other countries, going multi-platinum on both sides of the Atlantic. From that album came a run of classic singles that still define 1980s pop, like Wake Me Up Before You Go Go, a jitterbug-fueled, neon-bright pop song that hit number 1 in both the UK and US in 1984. Freedom, another UK number 1 in 1984, with lyrics about commitment and emotional honesty. Everything She Wants, a darker, more sophisticated track built around a tense relationship narrative, later a US number 1. And then there was Careless Whisper. Officially released as a George Michael solo single in July 1984, it was still very much rooted in the partnership of Andrew and George, co-written when they were teenagers and refined together during their pre-fame years. The single topped charts in the UK, US and at least 25 countries worldwide, becoming one of the best-selling singles of all time. Even though the single was branded as George Michael or Wham, featuring George Michael in some territories, the royalties and songwriting credit ensured that Andrew's contribution would support him for decades. As later reporting has noted, a large portion of his long-term income has come from Careless Whisper alone. By 1984 to 85, Wham were competing directly with Duran Duran to be Britain's biggest pop act. Manager Simon Napier Bell devised a bold move to cement their global profile, with Wham becoming the first Western pop group to play in the People's Republic of China. In April 1985, after warm-up shows in Hong Kong, they performed in Beijing's Workers' Gymnasium, and later in Guangzhou, then named Canton. The trip generated huge international media coverage and was documented in the film Wham in China Foreign Skies. That same year, Andrew appeared at Live Aid, singing backing vocals at Wembley during the Elton John set, while George duetted on Don't Let the Sun Go Down on Me. All the while, the hits kept coming. I'm Your Man reached number 1 in the UK in late 1985, and The Edge of Heaven gave Wham their 4th UK number 1 single in 1986. Behind the scenes though, things were changing. George was increasingly driven by deeper artistic ambitions and a desire to write more introspective material. Andrew, by contrast, had already achieved what he dreamed of, being in a successful band with his best friend. Their paths were starting to diverge, even if the friendship, at its core, remained strong. Rather than letting the band fade away through exhaustion or internal feuding, George and Andrew made a decision that still feels unusually graceful. They would end Wham while they were on top, and do it openly, with a proper farewell. Their last UK release, the compilation The Final, came out in July 1986, summarising their brief but spectacular run of hits. On the 28th of June 1986, Wham played a farewell concert at Wembley Stadium, also titled The Final, in front of around 72,000 fans. It was not a bitter breakup, it was a conscious closing of a chapter. In later interviews, he has insisted he was not resentful or envious. He was proud of his friend, and happy with what they had achieved together. For Andrew, The Final symbolized the end of his youth, but not the end of his life in music. After Wham ended, Andrew did something many pop stars dream about but rarely dare. He stepped away from the conveyor belt of fame and tried something entirely different. First stop was Monaco, where he pursued Formula 3 motor racing. He competed briefly but, by his own admission and the record books, had limited success. When racing didn't turn into a sustainable career, he moved to Los Angeles for a time, exploring acting. He took lessons and even considered film roles, but quickly realized that acting wasn't his calling. In 1990, fulfilling a clause in the old Wham contract that called for solo albums from both members, Sony released Andrew's only solo album, Son of Albert. The record leaned into guitar-driven rock, with Andrew on vocals and his brother Paul on drums. The album's first single, Shake, reached number 16 in Australia and number 58 in the UK, and became the 81st highest-selling single in Australia that year, respectable, but far from Wham-level success. A second single, Red Dress, charted in Australia but failed to break the top 100. Critically, Son of Albert was mauled, with one Rolling Stone review famously awarding it half a star. The album failed to reach the UK top 75, and the label declined a second record. Andrew later admitted that the ferocity of the criticism was depressing, but he didn't let it define him. In January 1991, he briefly reunited with George on stage in Rio de Janeiro, joining him for part of the encore at Rock in Rio at the Maracana Stadium, a short, affectionate reminder of their old chemistry. Then, quietly, Andrew stepped away from the spotlight. By the early 1990s, Andrew had largely vanished from the tabloid circus. He returned to the UK, and in 1994, moved to a converted farmhouse near Wadebridge in Cornwall with his long-term partner, Bananarama singer Karen Woodward, and her young son. Cornwall offered him something he had never really had during the Wham years: anonymity and a sense of normal community life. Locals know him as a regular at the Co-op, the local cinema and pubs, as well as on the golf course and along the beaches where he surfs. Surfing drew him into environmental activism. In the early 1990s, Andrew and his brother Paul both fell ill after surfing near a sewage outfall, which pushed Andrew to get involved with Surfers Against Sewage, a UK charity campaigning for clean coastal waters. He lent his name, time and money to campaigns aimed at ending the discharge of untreated sewage into British seas, and has spoken about the importance of water quality for public health and coastal communities. Over the years, he also became an enthusiastic road cyclist. He has repeatedly taken part in the Delalio Cycle Slam, grueling multi-day rides raising funds for Delalio Rugby Works, a charity that uses rugby to help disadvantaged young people. More recently, he has prepared for a ride from John O'Groats to Land's End, to raise money for suicide prevention charity Papyrus. On a personal note, Andrew's love life has occasionally surfaced in the press but has largely been kept private compared to many of his peers. During the height of Wham's fame in the 1980s, he dated backing singer Shirley Holloman, now Shirley Kemp, for about 2 years. That relationship eventually ended, but the friendship between all three, George, Andrew and Shirley, remained strong, and Shirley went on to marry Spandau Ballet bassist Martin Kemp. In 1990, Andrew began a relationship with Bananarama's Karen Woodward. They moved in together in Cornwall in the mid-1990s, raising Karen's son Thomas in their farmhouse home. The couple were together for roughly 25 years before splitting around 2017, although they remained on good terms and continued to live in the same area. In 2022, he was publicly linked with model and entrepreneur Amanda Cronin. They appeared together at events such as Wimbledon, but Cronin later confirmed that the relationship ended in 2023, describing him warmly, yet acknowledging that he might not be relationship material in the long term. For decades, Andrew mostly stayed out of the spotlight, making only occasional TV appearances, such as a 1994 guest spot on Fantasy Football League, and an interview for George's 2005 documentary A Different Story. The 2010s and 2020s, however, have seen a gentle re-emergence, very much on his own terms. On Christmas Day 2016, Andrew was devastated to learn that George had died. Their last meeting, just a few months earlier, had been a low-key evening with friends, a homemade meal and a fiercely contested board game. He paid tribute publicly and later delivered a moving speech at the 2017 Brit Awards alongside Pepsi de Mac and Shirley Kemp, honoring his friend's remarkable voice and generosity. In interviews since, he has chosen to focus on George's life rather than his struggles, remembering the laughter, the shared dreams, and the feeling that they were two kids from the suburbs who somehow conquered the world. In 2019, Andrew published his memoir, Wham! George and Me, through Penguin Random House. The book is as much a love letter to his friendship with George and their shared youth as it is a music autobiography, offering fans an insider's view without slipping into gossip or bitterness. That same year, he made a brief cameo in the romantic comedy Last Christmas, built around Wham! And George Michael songs, further cementing his role as guardian of the duo's legacy. In 2023, the Netflix documentary Wham! Introduced their story to a new generation, using archive footage and Andrew's own reflections to tell the tale from inside the friendship. He also took part in promotional interviews, speaking warmly about George, the band's creative process and the decision to end Wham! When they did. That same year, he inducted George Michael into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, standing on stage to honor the boy he'd met at 12 who became one of the greatest vocalists of his era. Today, Andrew Ridgeley's life looks very different from the whirlwind of the 1980s, and that's exactly how he wants it. He continues to live in and around Wadebridge in Cornwall, where he has been based for roughly 3 decades, focusing on cycling, charity work and occasional public appearances to honor George Michael. He recently received the Anglo-American Cultural Award in 2024 and remains a keen cyclist, regularly taking part in fundraising events. And there you have it. From bushy schoolboy to global pop star, Andrew Ridgeley's journey proves that fame, friendship, and a life well lived can be the greatest legacy of all. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos on your favorite artists, just like this. Take care and bye for now.